There we go. All right. So thank you, Tyler. Great answer. There's no like right or wrong answer. This is just in your own words. Who's next? What is dating in your own words?
I call it the trial and error phase.
Trial and error phase. Okay.
Because that's where you're getting to know each other. That's where you're getting to try it out to see if that's the person you want to be in a relationship with. You're getting to know not just each other, but getting to know yourself through the time that you spend with other people or this other person. So I call it the trial and error phase.
Trial and error phase, getting to know each other. Okay. Thank you, April. Who's next?
What I imagine it to be, because I've never really dated. Like kind of what both of them said, you know, getting to know a person. I've always been just, when I hear the word date, I really just only think of the actual date, like gathering in a place where they pick you up, you know, you are spending time together, dinner, movie, kind of movie, you know, fantasy world in my mind where it's, you know, dinner and a movie or, you know, walking somewhere and having ice cream. But I guess dating in the sense that we're talking about now is actually getting to know a person, because you should be dating for marriage, I guess. That's what I would think. But I don't know, it's my thought because I've never really dated.
Okay. Okay. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. We're not grading you or anything. You're free to say what you believe it is. Who's next?
I'll go. Can you repeat the question?
What is dating in your words, your own words?
Oh, okay. For me, that's a little complicated because I just kind of thought back on my first, well, it wasn't even a romantic relationship, but being sexually abused and that being my first encounter, kind of just put a bad taste in my mouth towards relationships, towards any of that. So for me, it's just a struggle, like from being violated in that way and that being my first encounter, not really knowing, having this distorted view of myself, of not trusting, you know, the opposite sex. So for me, there's always been a lot of fear there. And I kind of run away from relationships, even though that's what I want, but I don't think that that's something I could really have. So it's like I don't know, love and hate thing. I mean, I've dated, but it was just from a distorted place, I guess.
Okay.
That leaves Tierra and Tony.
Tierra and Tony, TNT.
I'll go. I think it's this weird kind of place between two things where the idea of marriage has existed for a very long time. The idea of dating, as we know it today, comes a lot from mostly European culture, which is like a very romantic era kind of thing, which is like 1800s, early 1900s, and it's kind of progressed since then, where it's about finding the one you love and finding the ideal person for you. And it's not, dating to me isn't truly representative of what marriage is, right? Marriage is a lot of work. It's not this idealistic utopian get together where everything is always great. It's, you know, you're gonna have hard times, you're gonna have difficulties, arguments, and you know, there's all these things tied into it. So to me, dating is kind of, I guess, this mixed bag of feelings where, you know, I view it as an opportunity to get to know somebody better and to see if we're compatible in that sense, because I think there are biblical concepts behind that, right? Of being equally yoked. That's the marriage phrase we throw around. Contextually, it's not really super appropriate, but it is applicable, I guess. And dating, I guess, is just, to me, is hey, let's figure out if we are compatible in that sense, and let's talk about our goals and what we want out of this. And it should be focused on, we're dating each other to seek marriage, and doing so in a godly fashion is also something that our culture pushes us away from and tells us like, no, you got to do it this way. Like you got to get to know each other, and the only way to do that is physically. So, I guess countercultural position there, but that's what I think of it.
Okay.
Come on, W.
I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. In my head, I think of dating as like a marital internship. Because most internships at like major companies you do for like 90 days or whatever, and then you become a full-time employee, right? That's kind of how I think of dating, is that like, it's a trial run or a test run, and you are getting to know this person to see if they fit into the culture that is of your family, that is of the vision that God has called you to, that kind of thing. And then if they do, you put a ring on it and they're a full-time employee. So that's kind of how I think of it.
Full time.
Full time.
We work overtime. We're salaried.
I like the comment that Tyler made though, that dating doesn't really teach you how to be married. Because dating is fun and whimsical and you're in your best behavior and you go to your own house. But marriage, like you said, you got to stick in there. So I think dating definitely doesn't prepare you for marriage.
Some funny facts about dating. This is one I thought was very interesting. This is from a woman, what's her name? Waggles. Mariah Waggles. It's called Labor of Love and the Invention of Dating. And one of the things that she says in her research about dating is that in the 1900s, dating could be a felony. Dating could have been a felony.
In the 1900s?
In the 1900s. At the turn of the century, dating was still a new concept and law enforcement wasn't sure what to make of it. But they were sure something sordid was going on. A young man and a young woman were meeting in public, him buying her food, drinks, and gifts. Well, it was a veritable prostitution in the eyes of the authority, and women could be arrested for it.
Women.
Why not the men?
Right. Okay.
Because
Don't get me started.
she's the prostitute.
She's the prostitute, John, so why is he not
Right.
being arrested too?
Yeah. Okay. But that's
See,
Hey, that's what they didn't know what was going on. Dating became big business. Before dating came into the picture, courtship and calling were conducted with the express goal of marriage. And I think Tony was talking about that it was supposed to be for marriage. It was a family affair, and callers meant heirs, property, happiness, and newly established dating industry, however, had other goals in mind. Marriage would actually hurt business. For the first time in human history, writes Waggles, dating made it necessary to buy things in order to get face time with prospective partners. This remains true today.
That's what Tony experienced. Okay. I'm laughing where she said, pay for my nails $150 before we go on the date. Literally.
No.
Okay, so I got a couple more things on here, but I'll bring them up later. Next question is, what is your purpose for dating? Don't give me the company line.
Oh, we employees.
Don't give me the company line. What is your purpose for dating? Don't tell me what it's supposed to be and all that kind of, when you began to date, what was your purpose? What did you have in your mind for dating? And it's important that we address that and we get that on the table.
Yeah.
Who wants to start off? Who's the brave one?
I think
No,
though,
agree
are
with
you
that.
saying that in regards to everybody dating that they've had some form of a relationship at some point in time?
That's your definition.
Okay.
We're not putting definitions in their mouth.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's just like when we asked the couples about what was their thought of marriage.
Okay.
What is your thought or your purpose for dating? Who's going? Was that Tony?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, for me, I think when I look at it and think about like what that means to me, I think that's kind of changed over the course of my adult life, where it was like when I was younger, when you're 16, 17, 18, I never really had marriage in mind when I was dating somebody. It was just like, hey, I think this person is attractive and let's hang out.
Right.
As I've gotten older and you kind of see past some of the superficial things, like to me, it's more about like I want to get to know somebody on a deeper level than just, hey, I see you at work or I see you in our friends circle, so that I can figure out whether or not I think that we would be a good match in a marriage. And I think that kind of like the gifts and buying things, like those are also kind of superficial to me too, where it's like I believe in being a gentleman, like that's how I was raised, and it's like paying for dinner and doing some of these other things, like I don't mind that, but that shouldn't be the basis of our relationship, is like how much I give you in that sense, as much as like how much do we learn from each other, how much do we help each other grow, and especially I think it should be centered around our relationship to God and to Christ, right? To me, that's what dating is in that sense, is how aligned are we with Christ in how we're seeking this dating and hopefully marriage relationship. So
Okay. Good answer. Great answer, actually. Anybody else?
I'll go if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. So my intent with dating, I guess like Tony, growing up, I was taught to be a gentleman, like hold doors open for women, pay for the dinner, things like that. So I guess I don't know. Growing up, like seeing my parents' marriage and all that, like and how hectic that was, like I always thought growing up, like, I did want to, and this was like, when I was a kid and all that, I thought, well, if I'm going to date, it's to get married. And growing up, like, I like had a couple dates here and there and, dated a couple girls. And I guess like a few of them, like my intent was like eventually, yeah, tie the knot. Um, but I don't know. I guess nowadays it's just like, I mean, kind of with everything I've been through with relationships and just dealing with certain women, like for me now, it's like, okay, like, yeah, marriage is a possibility, but I kind of want to get to know you and like see how this goes. And I mean, I don't know. I just feel like when you're new in the relationship, like talking about marriage, and this is just how it seems nowadays. Like, it's just like, oh, wait, you're moving too fast. Like, we just start dating and you want to get married. Like, you know what I mean? And I don't
Right.
know. And I guess that's kind of how I was always, I thought of it these past few years. But I guess to answer your question, for me, it's like, I would date to like tie the knot eventually, but I wouldn't like bring it up right away. Like I just would want to get to know the girl and just be like, okay, is this somebody I want to spend the rest of my life with? And yeah, I'd be a gentleman. I'd hold the door open, buy things for her, buy dinner and all that. But I agree with Tony. I don't think that should be like the basis of like why we're dating. It should just really be because we love each other and care about each other and really want to make this work. So
Okay. Awesome. It's good stuff. Who's next? What is your purpose for dating? Go ahead, April.
Originally, it was just to have that distraction, just something to take my mind off of everything else that was going on. But as I've gotten older, it is because I want to spend my life with somebody. So getting to know someone to potentially have them as my husband.
Okay. Right. Thank you, April. Who's next?
I'll go.
All right.
So, I think I mean, I had I started dating at a young age, but I think the intention for me was to be married and have a lifelong partner. But unfortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, of course, I had my daughter very young, and her dad left. So I started dating to kind of fill that space and create. And I still wanted to create a family. I wanted to create a family and have a dad for her. And moving forward, I look at it now. Every time I was hopeful that this will be a lifelong partner, and even my last marriage, because I've been married twice, it was kind of our joke that we got married to date. It's always been we did. We got married in 18 days.
Right.
So there was not a lot of dating going on in 18 days. So we were just like, yeah, we'll date once we get married. Because of course that was my thing. I've always said, trying to be right in the eyes of God, but not really knowing who you're marrying. But I think every time that I've entered into a relationship, the thought was for a lifelong partner.
Okay. Yeah.
And to create that family dynamic.
Good. Next. Tierra or Aquila. What is your purpose for dating?
I guess I'll go. I mean, I disagree with everything everybody else has said already. That to find a partner, to find the Clyde to my Bonnie.
Uh-oh.
So I think
To your missus.
right. I think that's pretty much it on the bigger scale. I think on the smaller scale, sometimes it just seems like too how do I put this? And I was trying to think of how to put this. But like when I think of, let's say, like the flirtationships that I have gotten into.
Flirtationship.
I would say it was more so just to spend time with someone that made me feel good and happy. You know what I mean? So I think that there's also that part of it too. So yes, I think that like reasonably to find a life partner, but also I think to find a partner that like makes life fun and enjoyable.
Nice.
That's my daughter.
Aquila. Oh, welcome, Evangelist Andy. Welcome to the party.
She's not on a date tonight. She was on a date last week.
Aquila, what is your purpose for dating?
That's a tough one. For me, I really don't see the point. Not that I don't see the point. I guess I'll just say that I've really had bad experiences.
Well, Aquila,
I don't know.
what was the purpose when you went into the dating?
I would like to get married eventually, but I'm also afraid of being married.
Yeah,
So it's like
I'm just asking the purpose. That's all.
yeah, the purpose. I would like to get married, but part of me is also afraid of that because I don't feel like anyone will fully be able to love and accept me. So I still have some healing work that God has to do in my heart. Because I don't know, I kind of let media and different things, like I was a full-on romantic, like I just want somebody to come, sweep me off of my feet and then we'll live happily ever after and we'll get married. So if I had a choice, I would rather skip the dating part. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking of dating according to my experiences or according to the world.
Well, that's
on it.
Right. That's the question.
To me, my experience. Oh, go ahead. What was the question?
No, I was just saying that's the question. What is your purpose, or what was your purpose for dating? You know, I
So
don't.
it was
Right
just to
answer.
find someone to be there for me and my kids, basically. Like I said, after I was abused when I was younger, my next relationship was with my daughter's dad. So I hopped into this relationship at 16, thought this was my high school sweetheart, fell in love, ended up, fornicating because I wanted that. I wanted to choose to do that with someone special. Ended up pregnant, at 18, 19. So then there was all these hopes and promises my daughter's dad made to be there, which didn't work out. And so it was
Right.
like my dreams were shattered of this fairy tale, happily ever after. I'm like, maybe I'll never have that because I never imagined myself being a single mom. Like we were engaged and everything, so I was just kind of distraught. So after that, there was a lot of hurt there. So I was just dating in the hopes that somebody would be there to complete me. I felt incomplete as a single mom. I wanted my daughter to have a father figure.
So in essence, your purpose for dating kind of changed over time. It started out one way, then it kind of changed into another way, and then probably changed again. And
Right.
now you're at a place where, well, I
So,
don't necessarily know.
right.
I-
I don't even
Okay.
want to date
Okay.
one right.
I just wanted to summarize it because I didn't want to,
Yeah.
go too far into it.
That was the summary.
Okay. All right. Evangelist Andy, welcome to the party.
Hey y'all. I'm gonna be good this time, I promise.
Amen. That's play nice, play nice.
I am.
I guess I'll bring you in on this question. We're asking each person in their own words, what is their purpose for dating? I don't want the right answer. I want the real answer.
Oh, I'm gonna keep it real.
Thank you.
For sure. My purpose in dating is companionship and partnership. I am from this someone. I got all the way where I need to be. And I tend to controlling types who at first they're okay with me being a preacher and a teacher and all of that. And they come and support when I preach. And then somewhere along the line, they feel like, I'm supposed to stop preaching because we're together. And I'm sorry, but it's God over everything. So that's why I'm still single.
Amen. Amen. So I want to give you guys a kind of a brief, easy to remember definition. It's not all encompassing, but for the purposes of what we're doing tonight, I need you to kind of have this as your working definition. So a date is setting aside time to spend with someone, right? It's pretty simple, right? A date is setting aside time to spend with someone. So dating is setting aside or continually setting aside time to spend with someone. So dating would be continually setting aside time to be with someone or to spend time with someone. Don't know exactly how I want to say that, but you get the gist of it. And the reason why I'm defining it that way is because originally when dating began, it wasn't always called dating. It kind of began to be called that because people would set time, meet me here, and it would actually be a date on the calendar. And so by setting a time to meet with someone on a specific time, place, date, they eventually called it dating. And that's pretty much what we've always known it to be, but it wasn't a thing before, you know, we started coining that phrase. And it's kind of a, you know, I think Tony talked about it. It's kind of a European thing, you know, it's not really an American thing. So if dating is setting aside time, then this time must be managed in a way that pleases the Lord. Whatever that time looks like, it should be managed in a way that pleases the Lord. And that's based off of our pretty much central verse that we've been using each week, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 32, that an unmarried person should be without a care, and they should be focused on how they may please the Lord. And so that's the focus. So if that's the focus, that the time that I set aside to spend with a person, dating, if that time should be managed in a way that pleases the Lord, there are a couple of different things that fall under that category. So number one, we'll say purpose. I asked you guys, what is your purpose for dating, right? Would you say in your own words, and everybody doesn't have to answer this, just the ones that want to, or that I call on if don't nobody answer. What would you say that your purpose for dating pleases the Lord? Now it does.
Now it does.
April said now it does.
Just being honest.
Anybody else, can you say my purpose for dating pleases the Lord?
I mean, I'll go. I mean, I think that that's kind of been the emphasis of where I've been at in this journey lately, of looking at, you know, kind of like what I was saying earlier about how we, you know, are called to kind of lay that down on the altar, so to speak. And, you know, that's to me is like, okay, the reason why God was pleased with Abraham is because he was willing to sacrifice something that he cared deeply about, and that somebody that he loved dearly, right? And you know, when I look at just the last 10 years, hold on. Sorry, somebody's calling for me. But you know, when I look at like even just like the last 10 years, I mean, I would say no, right? Like my purposes for dating were mostly selfish. It was about me. It was about, you know, I want to be happy. I want what everybody else has. And like it's covetous, right? Like you're jealous of, hey man, all my other friends have a wife and kids now, and I mean, dang, I'm 30, like time to go, you know, like whereas like it just as I've reflected on it even more in this past year and really thought about it, it's like, you know, yeah, I do want this to be something that's pleasing to God. And I also think that I shouldn't be seeking my happiness or my contentment or my joy in another person, right? That's something that I need to give back to God or lay on the altar in that sense, because I do love that. And I do really want that, right? Like that's something that I want for my life dearly, but I also need to be willing to lay that up, to sacrifice to God, to say like, this is yours and this isn't mine. And you know, forgive me for being selfish and not thinking of you in this, because you should be the center of this anyway. So I guess it's kind of like yes and no. You know, that's what I got.
Man, that's deep, brother. Man.
It's the only kind of thoughts I have, apparently. I think too much is the problem.
Yeah, you think very deeply. Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Tierra.
I was gonna say that I think so. Because I think that for me, I think there's a, how should I put this? I think there's a distinction between like my desires for dating and like what I actually perceive the purpose of dating to be. Because I think like according to my mood, my desire for dating fluctuates, right? Like
Right.
sometimes it's I just want somebody to do this with me. Or, I just want to have, like Tony was saying, I want to have what other people have, or like, and then it's also true of like, even with like godly things. So sometimes I was like, oh, if I had a partner, we could go and do this together, blah, blah, blah. But then I think that as far as like actually how I act, like the actions that I take do line up with God's purpose for marriage. Because I think that that's part of, like Tony was saying, part of the reason that I have been waiting and part of the reason that I have been patient and intentional about it is because I want to make sure that when I do date, that my desires and the purpose that I have for dating line up and that those line up with God's will. So for me, I would say, I think so.
Anybody else want to chime in? Everybody doesn't have to chime in, but if there's somebody else that wants to share something on this, would you say that your purpose for dating pleases the Lord?
I'm just gonna say in the past, definitely not.
Okay.
Kind of like Tony, I guess in the past I was doing it to kind of please myself and to make myself happy and do it because other people were in relationships and that's what I wanted. And I guess like in my relationship with my ex, like we didn't really like center God around it and it just like fell apart. And I guess, yeah, in the past, like I didn't do it for God. It was just all about me and my partner, and that was it. And I just had to kind of rechange that thinking a little bit and kind of reprogram it. So
Yes, excellent. Okay, so strategically, I want to pull in now. Let's see, I know Tierra was here last week, Nikki and April. We've been talking about dating, but part of the homework was what is betrothal? What is that, and how does that fit into this dating thing that we're talking about? So who actually did the homework as a definition of betrothal, and how does this dating thing jive with that? Tierra.
So I did do the homework. I didn't like look up the definition of betrothal.
Okay.
I just came up with like my definition for it.
Okay.
And I said that it was a promise to marry. So for me, I guess as far as dating goes, betrothal would be like, I guess the commitment at the end, or like, yeah, towards the end of dating, when you realize that like, okay, it's not just a trying out process anymore, that like this person actually is the one. So like, let's start doing, like premarital, blah, blah, blah. And like, let's talk, like there's an actual commitment in place to marry that person, not just to try and see if it works, if that makes sense.
Okay. So dating is pre-betrothal in your mindset.
It sounds like she's equating it betrothal to engagement.
Right, Tierra? Just make sure I'm not misquoting you.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Who's next? Who did the homework?
The definition that I got was to be engaged or engagement, which meant it was the next step in the process of getting closer to marriage.
Okay.
And then looking at dating, looking at the definition that you gave for dating, I realized that even in engagement, betrothal, and marriage, you can still be dating.
Right.
You can date your spouse, you can date your fiance.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Nick, go ahead, Nikki.
So I had I guess a different definition. First of all, I will say I would be all for it if it was the way I thought it was supposed to be. Because when I think of my betrothed, I think of back in the day where families kind of came together. They decided these two will be married. You know, sometime there was some type of present involved to the family, blah, blah, blah. But it was like an understanding. And so I joke sometimes with people, and I'm like, oh, life would be so much easier if we were just betrothed. If my parents could have just picked who I was gonna marry. And you know, back then it was like a commitment. Like they might not have liked it, but they went along with it and they were in it till the end. So I thought of it back like kind of almost like medieval times, back in the day where it was families that decided upon this marriage.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Be a lot easier, I tell you.
Well, in some ways, you know, from a biblical standpoint, betrothed is engaged, or it actually can be considered married if the bride price has been paid. And so, you know, the dowry, you know, so in the case of Mary and Joseph, obviously the bride price had been paid because he would have had to divorce her. And they were only, well, I say only betrothed, but it describes her as betrothed, that they weren't married, but yet he would have had to actually divorce her in order to separate from her. And I thought that was interesting. Looking through, because most of the references to betrothal are in the Old Testament. And the word betrothal is translated 6 times as engaged. So in a biblical standpoint, it kind of is the same thing. There's this place where you're committed, and once the bride price is paid, you're basically married, even if the consummation hasn't happened. And in those days, consummation, right, is the actual coming together. And so sex almost said that you were married. That was like the way you knew you were married, because pretty much all the women were virgins, right? We live in a different day and time, right?
Right.
And part of the reason why our time is different is because of the dating. Dating actually, and I don't think April meant this when she said it earlier, but dating for a lot of people is the test run. And you're not just testing to see if we're compatible mentally, emotionally, and goal, but you're actually testing to see if you're compatible physically as well. We're all grown, so I figured, you know, nobody's put off by that. So when we think about this whole betrothal, the seriousness of it in the Bible, I think gives the idea of engagement. And so engagement is where we go right after dating for us, right? You dated for a while and you say, okay, I think this is the one. You become engaged. You know, during that time period, you know, there's exclusivity, right? You're not even looking at anybody else because you're preparing for marriage. When it comes down to the dating, what are your examples? Where did you get your picture from? Who did you watch? Did it come from television? Did it come from older siblings or aunts, uncles, parents? Where did your examples for dating come from growing up or in your younger years? Some of you are still young.
Mine, I would just say was from our peers.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say I didn't see any healthy dating. Because of course we came up in the era where, you know, people started having sex at a much younger age. Usually you were high school sweethearts. Y'all was in love and y'all was gonna be together forever. So why wait? And we also, a lot of us came from single parent homes, so we didn't see healthy dating. So we didn't even have an example of that. So it's really just our peers. They did it, we did it, you did it, everybody did it. You were almost an outcast if you didn't do it.
Right. Anybody else? Who was your example of dating growing up? What were your examples?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I guess, same, where it's like the examples that I had weren't good ones. You know, my mom and dad were never married, actually. So, you know, it's like I never even knew what that looked like growing up. My mom, single mom, 3 kids, and then she's getting divorces after she got married again, and you know, it's very unhealthy dating patterns. And I think a lot of that also came from my grandparents. You know, grew up in the 60s, so it's like the era of free love, right?
Right.
So just a lot of bad examples poured on top of each other. And then, yeah, I mean, it was when you reach the age where you're kind of cognizant and able to make your own decisions, then it's all your peers who are influencing your dating decisions. And to them, to, you know, a bunch of high school boys, you know, college age boys, it's like, I don't have to draw too many lines there for you to know what that looks like to date, where it's like, well, what's your goal, right? And every high school or college age guy is the same, right? Where it's like the end goal of dating isn't marriage. It's purely sexual relations, and that's it.
Right.
Right. And so those were kind of the examples that I had, you know, growing up, to where kind of had to take matters into my own hands when I got into my 20s and just said, okay, well, what is marriage, and like what actually is this dating thing? And so kind of had to go out and seek that from older people who had been down this road and were successful in keeping their marriages together and listening to their input. And I think that's, like, you have to really dig for that nowadays to find good examples. It's not that it's that much of a rarity as much as there's just a very large amount of bad examples.
From my sister, that's where I got my example, was from my older sister. I think when she finally started dating, I had to be in about 5th grade. And so I made up my mind that I wanted a relationship like hers. And the biggest thing was he picked her up from school and took her to school. And so I just determined I wanted a guy to be with me all the time like that. And so I think you're right. I never thought about, where did I get my example from dating though. So I don't know.
Coach.
I had examples of what not to do. And then when it came to like my dad and my stepmom, they kept their relationship and kept everything hidden from us until we found out from people at church that they were engaged, let alone together.
Right.
So most of my examples were of what not to do. Okay. I know I won't be doing that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I guess my examples growing up was like TV and TV shows and all that, because I mean, I guess like a lot of us, like, you know, my parents, they just, again, kind of had a hectic relationship when I was growing up, and I knew I didn't want the same thing for me. So I guess I looked in other places, and it was like Disney and, you know, I mean, for real, like Little Mermaid, like, you know, stuff like that growing up, like Beauty and the Beast, like, you know, stuff like that. It was just like, oh, that's how a relationship should be, I feel like, you know, so.
Yeah. I think that's why I kind of asked this question, because, you know, a lot of times we don't know what shapes our image, you know, and by knowing where it came from, now you can kind of think about it and address it and, just filter it. Like, well, that's where I got that from. I don't know if I want that to be my example, right? I don't know if I want that to be my example. So another one of your homework questions was, when it comes down to what we call dating, and we get into a situation where we want to show affection and touching, what is too much? What is too far? And I think we have to answer that question, because a lot of times we don't even think about that until we're there, right? And so where is that line? Where do you draw it?
Anything that causes arousal.
Uh-huh. Well, so since you said that, what's the difference between affection and arousal?
So I look at affection as being like holding hands, hugging, arm around each other, things like that. Arousal is anything that takes you to where you're like, okay, I need to know what this person looks and feels like underneath what they have on. The impure, the not so saved thoughts.
Not so saved. Okay. Anybody else? What's too far? Is there anything to add or?
I mean, I guess when I think of too far, I think just like looking at it biblically, right? Like, doesn't really say much about kissing, right? Like there isn't much that's like no Frenching, right? If you find it in the Bible, let me know. But there is a very clear line that the Bible draws about tethering yourself to somebody, right? And I think, especially when we think of consummating a marriage, sexual activity is very clearly delineated to say this is something that is tethering you to somebody. That's why the scripture says, would Christ tether himself and his church to a whore, right? Is the words that scripture uses, to a harlot, right? However you want to phrase that. Sorry, PG-13.
Yeah.
But it's like, would Christ tether himself to that, right? And the answer is no. And so I think that in some ways, yes, like anything that's going to lead you to physical arousal and temptation beyond what you are able to handle should very clearly be put out to where that isn't something that's going to lead you into doing that. I think for everybody that I don't know if there's a very clear line there, other than to say like, hey, if it's going to lead you into a space where you feel like you are not going to be able to handle that temptation, you should avoid that. And that's, I think, individual for everybody, but you can clearly say, okay, sexual activity is definitely one that is a big no. Whether or not you get aroused from giving somebody a kiss goodnight and it's there's not anything like overtly sexual there, I guess that's kind of a hard one.
Right. It is individual, so yeah. Anybody else want to chime in on this?
I will. I'm not solo, but I will.
Like what?
I know, like April was saying, the arousal, and Tony was saying whatever that is to the individual. But I don't think we look as time also as something that can be too far. I mean, even in the definition of today, it's setting a specific time. I think when you just find yourself in times of just, and it's not intentional or pointed, then it could be going too far. And I don't know that we really put thoughts into it like that. I think of a lot of people that I know that find themselves in awkward situations with another person is because they somehow got together that wasn't planned and it just kind of just happened. And I think so time could be something when you spend too much time or unintentional time, like not designated of what you're gonna do. Purposeful time can also be too far.
Mhm. Mhm. Anybody else?
I was just going to add on to a little bit of what was just said too of emotions, right? I think time and emotions, we talk all the time, especially to married couples, about emotional affairs, right? And I think in a lot of ways we can set ourselves up for disappointment and heartbreak and failure when we allow somebody into too much of our emotional space too, where they don't belong, right? Like that's a space that if you aren't married, that should be reserved for God. And so there's certain things that you shouldn't be broaching with people who are not either your spouse or your God, right? So I guess I'd tack that on there too, that emotions can be a space where we allow people to go too deep with us that leads to other things.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% because that's that tethering. That's that word, because we've been talking about two different words to join.
Yes.
And that word,
The glue,
join,
the
is the
cementing,
glue,
yeah.
the cementing, the intentionally going to an intimate relationship space with someone. Whereas I feel like growing up or coming from the world, that was kind of what you were supposed to do when you were dating, right? You're supposed to, that's how you knew you were dating, because you're spending all this time together, investing emotionally, physically, whatever. So you felt like that's what you were supposed to do.
But I think I've heard people say, and they may not have been physical with a particular person, but I've heard them say that they would not break something off that is unhealthy because they have invested too much time and effort into it, and I think that would be that emotional place that people are looking at, and time as well.
Any other comments on that before I move forward?
I have a question.
Yes.
Because I know that you two have counseled many a married couple. Were any of those, did they date healthy? I mean, because I guess what I would like to see an example of healthy dating, because especially because like you said, we're all adults here. You say how far is too, I think the question was, when touching, where do you draw the line? How far is too far? And I would say for probably someone that has not been intimate, it's going to be easy because they don't know how far is far because they haven't gone far. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But for people that have been intimate, it's like a natural rotation that their mind, I think, it's harder for them to say, oh, wait, so I would, just for myself, examine some couples that dated in a healthy way and then entered into a healthy marriage.
I think when you're talking about it in that way, Nick, one difference is for people who have already had exposure to being sexually active, right? Mm-hmm. They generally tend to become sexually active before actually jumping into the relationship,
right? Which
is unhealthy. A person that has not encountered sexual activity can still have an unhealthy relationship because they invest other things as opposed to the sex themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So both can be equally unhealthy, right? It's just really up to the individuals involved in the relationship. What I have seen though is across the board, right? Whether the people have had physical contact or not, most people do not want to stop the relationship and reset it to do it intentionally and purposely the right way. It's like when you break a bone, right? And the bone starts healing. And you go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, the bone is healing incorrectly. I have to reset this. And so they have to re-break it the correct way and set it so that it can heal correctly. And a lot of people have problems wanting, first of all, accepting to do that and wanting to do that.
Right.
So yeah.
And so I have two experiences. One fits that prototype or whatever. Billy and Jennifer. Billy and Jennifer were already dating, and when they made the commitment to get married, for 6 months, they refrained from sex. They said, okay, we're gonna push the reset. We're going to break the bone and reset it, right? So they they actually did that. And they weren't the only ones to do that, but that's when I know that we had, spent time with them. And believe it or not, barring a few, mishaps here and there, Anthony and Ariel actually went about the process correctly. Not saying it was easy, but they actually did it. They actually did not engage in sex before marriage, and they dated for quite a long time. It was hard. They needed a lot of accountability. There were times where they, got close, and I get a phone call, hey man, we were in trouble. That kind of thing. And I don't think they would be embarrassed about me saying this because, Anthony's, would tell his story. But they actually were able to do it. There was times where they would actually go on a fast from touching just so that they could reset, because they felt like, man, we're getting a little too handsy here, and the longer an engagement goes on, the harder it is.
Right.
And that's why we don't, and I was going to ask that as a question, number one, how long should you date before you make that commitment? And then how long should an engagement period be? And I think it goes back to this question. It directly connects to this question about how far is too far, because I think it is diverse, and varies between people, and couples. One couple may be able to be engaged for 3 years and not have any problems. Another couple is like 3 weeks is like, we engaged, we better get this going because I don't know, So I think these are questions that have to be asked. These are questions that have to be presented so that you can be thinking about them and praying about them. I don't necessarily have definitive answers, but it varies.
I think that would also go into, a lot of people have the ideal that premarital is for the engagement period.
Right.
Premarital is actually for the dating period.
Yeah.
It's not for the engagement period, because it actually brings to the surface the different things for you to discuss into, well, do I really want to do with this or do I not? A lot of people put premarital on the end right before the marriage, and it's kind of the end point. So
kind of too late because you've already made the decision.
If you have different opinions, you're like, well, I don't want to back out of this anyway.
Right, it's too late.
As opposed to doing it in the beginning, where you can say, okay, yeah, no, okay, we need to be friends because this is a non-negotiable right here. This is, and then we can't work this out. And a lot of people don't think of it that way. They think of it in reverse, actually.
Right. So we lost a couple of people. Man, we too hard on them, huh?
It's going too deep, man.
Too deep. Too deep.
Okay, so the other homework question.
I just want you to tell me.
Oh.
So I can make it.
Oh.
All right. Okay, so your conduct in dating should please the Lord. When you're when you're thinking about going out on a date, what is your thought of what you should wear? What are you thinking that you should wear? And why?
I feel like for guys, this is like way different though. Because it's like, I'm not gonna wear like provocative clothing, you know what I mean? Like show a little chest. Check out these hairs, you know? Like, just if we're being honest, like I think there's a little less temptation to show stuff off there. I guess maybe like,
You're not gonna have that tight t-shirt showing off the bust,
yeah,
Tony?
be like, yo, girl, you want to see what Too Many Cinnamon Rolls does? Check out this shirt. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Loaded question, man. I can speak from a guy's perspective to like, I guess I probably wouldn't wear anything super provocative. I mean, I'll probably just wear like most dates I go on, I'm actually usually wearing my suit because I'm just like, all right, you want to go on a date at 6 o'clock? I'm working till 5. I'm not gonna have time to get home. So I'm gonna show up in my suit. I'm gonna look good anyway. So but from a guy's perspective, I think with women, like I think that's one of the hardest things is something we talk about in men's group all the time is like it's really like tempting and difficult for men when it's like, I mean, if you show up to a date and you're wearing like a low cut shirt where it's like you've got things on display and like got your makeup and your hair all done up and it's like that's really hard. Like as a guy, that puts me in a bad position because it's like I'm coming into this thinking like, man, she looks really good, you know? And it's like that's already setting me up to go down some roads that I shouldn't even be going down like mentally. So I guess that's my perspective on it.
Well, you know, and I see your hand here. I think I'm gonna help you out with this because from a from a man's side of this equation, it's not about being provocative, but it can be about dressing in a way that the goal is to give an impression that you're somebody that you're not.
You mean like the wrinkles,
So
cologne?
you might, you know, so you wear a suit to work every day. So you meetings up with somebody in a suit actually is just you, right? But if you had a $3,000 suit hanging in the closet for a date, and you say, I'm gonna pull this out for the date.
On the gold chain.
I'm gonna put on, yeah, I'm gonna put on some rings and watch and
This
I'm
one's on
gonna look
layaway.
like, right, I'm gonna look like a millionaire because I'm going out on this date. Is that fair to the date? Because if that's not really you, but you're dressing that way to impress her, right? And so do I want to do, because I feel like that's what we were taught to do. If you're going out on a date, you're supposed to make her think you big daddy,
Man.
you big daddy Warbucks. You know, you got money falling out your pocket. By accident, you dropping 100. Oh, my bad. That's fine.
Sorry.
Let me put that 100 back in my pocket. So yeah, let me go rent a BMW so I can pull up out front and look. I mean, so yeah, that kind of thing. So I think with
I guess I've never done that. So
right. And I think for a man, it's not about provocative, but it's about dressing in a way where it's status. And she's looking at you like, oh, how much money he made? You know, that kind of thing. So yeah. Tierra.
pay all my bills.
I was gonna say, and this is probably a testament to my upbringing, but the first thing I think of when you say I'm going on a date is, well, where are we going? So for me,
where are we going?
So for me, like I am a very practical dresser. So I immediately think, well, where are we going? Because if we're going to dinner, I'm not going to wear the same thing I would wear to dinner that I would wear to the movies. You know what I mean? Or if we're going to an amusement park, I'm not going to wear the same thing to an amusement park that I would wear to like, I don't know, skiing, a ski resort or something like that. So very practical. But I think also for me, because I was raised, not to think of dating as the purpose of marriage and not to emphasize, like the physical stuff. For me, when I dress, it would be more about looking and feeling beautiful as opposed to, oh, let me entice this person, right? Is that I think that I would want to be confident and not, worried about how I look or how I feel. And so let me wear something that makes me feel good and look good, in my opinion. So that's how I think of it.
Okay.
If he said a country buffet, then I need to wear the right clothes for the country buffet.
Right, exactly. I'm gonna
Right.
wear my stretchy pants.
My stretchy pants.
Right.
A long flowy skirt so that it'll hide my rolls.
With pockets.
Okay, anybody else? April, Nikki, what do you think about wearing on a date?
I think for me, it goes, when it comes to wearing, there's more to it than just the clothes.
Mhm.
So it's the prepping before
Mhm.
you putting the clothes on. Which body wash am I gonna wear so that way I can make sure I smell good?
Smell is a
Which-
big thing, right?
Yeah,
there. Smell is a big thing.
do I get my hair and my nails done? Do I do all of that? And it's one of those things where what do I wear doesn't even come into play until, like Tiara said, until I know where we're going. But everything else comes into play, making sure I smell good, making sure everything is all right, tied and dyed and fried and laid to the side, and the saying goes and whatnot. So yeah,
Truthfully, if I spent more in the prepping than he spends on the date,
we got problems.
we got a problem.
We got problems.
But I mean,
See what I mean? See what I mean?
That's what I'm talking about, man. Man.
I'm pretty practical too. I like comfort. I choose comfort over so it's gonna be, and like I said, of course we need to probably know where we're going. But yeah, I'm pretty practical, pretty easy, because I like to be comfortable where we're gonna go, because I see women and I actually feel sorry for a lot of times when women are too decked out because they look so uncomfortable. They look like little ducks kind of pecking around, and the guy's comfortable and she's uncomfortable. Yeah, guys are comfortable. Usually guys are very much comfortable.
So Nikki, did you always think that way?
No, when I was younger, I definitely was gonna not so much a cleavage girl, but my pants are always gonna be real fitted.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me that was my attribute.
she's like, I like the attributes.
So yeah, when I was younger,
Attributes, right?
Okay.
yeah, and I would even wear heels when I was younger because that was kind of the, but
Yeah.
in this day and time, if I was to go on a date, I would be very much comfortable.
But I think, okay, so I got to bring this up, and my daughter's going to hit me on my head. But now there's this term, this Netflix and chill. There's a lot more dating going on, staying at home, than there is actually going out. And so I think there's a danger in that, in the sense of the fact that it can be unintentional, right? But it also can be too much time because you're at the house. We got to get it from the table after we finish our meal. The movie's over and we need to be there, or this or that. There's kind of this really, really relaxed time piece, which makes it almost unintentional. And I've been informed that Netflix and chill means something other than what I actually thought it meant. So
I think
Yeah,
too,
the chill portion anyway.
right. I think too, we've kind of gotten lazy when it comes to the dating process, when it comes to dress, when it comes to what's actually going on, because now it isn't going to the movies. I have Amazon Prime, I have Netflix, I have this, I have that, the weekend chill, and then it turns into extracurricular activities that should not.
But is that lazy or is that strategy?
A little bit of both.
And I think it's even our times. Last year, you couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So you got comfortable. Well, I can come to your house, you can come to mine.
Yeah.
You know, so now you spend a year coming to my house and me going to yours. Now all of a sudden you want to go to the restaurant. That's not what we do. We
Right,
chill.
right.
Why are we going out?
Right. But so I think one of the things that I think you have to do, and this goes back to, again, be purposeful and intentional to please God, right? That's in the dating piece. We are to approach it from that perspective. If you approach it from that perspective, how likely are you actually to sit at the house and do the Netflix and chill?
Yeah, but you gotta think through it. So I'm gonna throw a word out there. Everybody here is grown, and this may kind of seem like what? Well, you know, one of the things that when Ariel and Anthony were dating, and I told them, I said, y'all grown, y'all do what y'all want. But I suggested that they gave themselves a curfew. That there was a certain cutoff time for us talking on the phone or hanging out at each other's house to eliminate temptation. Because if I'm sitting on the phone with you at night in my bed, there's a good possibility that or if I'm at your house late at night, you know, and I don't feel like leaving or going home. So I suggested a curfew for them. What do you guys think about a self-imposed curfew?
I think that there's some truth to like old sayings and things like that, and like when they say nothing good happens after 2, you know. Like
after 2, after
He
12.
said
after 2, after 12, whatever. Like, you look, I was a bartender for a long time, so you know,
Come out at
the
night.
saying's different. But either way, I think that the concept behind that is like, you know, sticking around for too long, lingering too long, nothing good comes out of that. And so I think that that is a good tool for you, for us to utilize, you know, because that's in past times, like when I've succumbed to temptation and dating relationships and gone places I shouldn't have gone and done things I shouldn't have done. The main reason behind that is because, oh, we're hanging out at the house and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean? And we're both still awake, you know, it's like, I think that you can remove yourself from a lot of that temptation and not put yourself in that situation if you're willing to say, hey, at this time, I'm going home. Like at 10 o'clock, we call it a night because, like you said, you know, we're all adults here. I got work tomorrow. You got work tomorrow. We got things to do. So let's be grown up about this and say we're not going to continue past this point.
We're not gonna engage in
But I think,
extracurricular.
so Tony, that goes to our day and age where we'd be like, if when you getting this phone call 11 o'clock, him telling you to come over at 11, 12 o'clock, that's a booty call.
Right. That hasn't changed.
Right.
Just the phrasing is different.
But you know
Yeah.
what's crazy, and I can only speak for myself. A lot of times, if you really like a person, you want to enter, you didn't view it like that. You just thought, well, this is the only time, you know, depending on work schedules, you know, and of course, it gets late. But I think a lot of times, I can only speak for women. I don't know about men. They have gone with perspective of just getting that time, not thinking it was that was his only thought, but just like we're going to spend time. So I think a lot of young women, unfortunately, have thought, oh, this is my opportunity to spend some time, and then it turns into something else, and then it's not what they thought.
Right.
So it is really important for young women to refrain from that and just know if he has time at midnight, he can make some time at noon, you know.
Well, and I think that, yeah, and I think kind of part of that goes into also talking about, like, you know, I don't know if y'all have ever read the book, like the 5 love languages, but like, how do you receive love? How do you receive affection from somebody? And for all of us, that's different. And so to the woman, it could be, you know, she receives that feeling of value from spending time with somebody. And so to her, us spending a couple hours together extra is fine because she feels like that's how we're connecting. But to the guy, the way that he sees that is most men, and this isn't all men, but most men is like physical touch is pretty high up on that list. So to him, he's thinking, if I spend enough time with her, I'm going to get some physical touch, you know?
Right.
So like,
right.
I think that's why the curfew works, because it's like, no, we're setting a defined principle here that says, yes, I do care about you and I value you, and I value you enough to say that like I'm willing to put aside something that makes me feel valued and feel loved to make sure that you and I have good, healthy boundaries, and we both experience that together without crossing those lines, right?
That's why I was saying a lot, especially women, in their desire to urgency to be in a relationship, they accept that 11 o'clock phone call
Mhm.
and think of it as quality, as opposed to wait until Saturday at 11 a.m. when you can go to brunch, right?
It's 8:30.
And that's quality.
Right, but a lot of women aren't going, because we talked about, remember we talked about that too.
Mhm.
The urgency for some, women, and then the shortage of men. So if
Yeah.
she doesn't answer at 11, another woman will, and she knows that. So
Wow.
she's like, I better take the call because Saturday might not come.
Well,
You
and
know?
I know we're probably getting close to time, so I won't
Yeah,
take too much. But I don't know if you guys have ever heard of what's referred to as the Brad Pitt test, right? But I think that that's how we should look at it. That's actually something like weirdly enough, something that's helped me a lot in my dating relationships to know like who values me and who doesn't.
Mhm.
Is, hey, if I ask you to hang out and you say no, and you don't offer me a time that you could hang out, that tells me you probably don't want to hang out, right? It's kind of like if Brad Pitt asked one of you to dinner tomorrow and you legitimately had plans, you would say, I'm so sorry, Brad Pitt, I can't go to dinner tomorrow. How about Saturday? Right? So it's like if he actually values you and wants to get to know you better, then, or she in that matter, I guess, but like if they value you and want to get to know you better, they will offer an alternative.
Yeah.
So, this is our last class. To the chagrin of April, she's been asking all night. One more week. I'm just gonna ask this question.
April says this needs to be a live class.
Me and Nikki both said it.
So we talked about dress, we talked about curfew, conversation. How do we keep our conversation in a way that pleases the Lord? Because I feel like, me growing up, yeah, curfew, you hang out too late, you get in trouble. But I feel like a lot of us talked ourselves into trouble.
Mhm.
We got to talking and, got to saying stuff, and next thing you know, you got to prove stuff, and, so how do we keep those conversations, and from straying into those places?
I think that's hard. That to me is the hard, because to have a conversation.
And just so you guys know, everything I've asked you, I have scriptures down here for all of this. So if you want those, you can get those from me. Because you know how I think. I don't just pull stuff out the air. I study and then, go off of what I study. So
I think that's difficult, because to just have a conversation about modern times, our world, what's going on in your day, what's going on in my day, you could be led to having inappropriate conversations. And so that to me is, out of all of the ones that you taught, you said dress, curfew, right? What else? And what, if I missed one? You said dress and curfew, and now conversation. Conversation seems to be the most difficult, in my opinion.
in your opinion.
In my
Y'all
opinion.
see what I married, right? No, just kidding.
And I didn't even understand the question. You said, how do you keep conversations? What? I missed it.
Just from leading you to temptation. Like I said, when I was growing up, that was like a key element to getting myself in trouble.
Right.
Well, probably, like you said, you got to limit the time. If you spend less time, you're going to have less conversation. And then I think less, like Taya was saying, closed door time. If it's just y'all two, y'all going to start talking.
Right.
You know?
We'll talk about stuff, right?
Stuff, right. And then if y'all watching some on Netflix and they talking about stuff, now you know what I'm saying?
You watching them doing something, And then you be like, hey, what do you think about them doing that?
Right.
So
What'd you say, April?
I said, but even with that, it goes into phone conversation. You're texting
Yeah,
and
that's
your
what I'm talking
FaceTime
about.
and your phone call. So to me, it's one of those things where if you kind of have, and this is going to sound probably really crazy, but I found out that it works sometimes. If you have a planned, like, or like an outlined dialogue for your phone calls or for your text messages, then sometimes it'll not head that direction.
Yeah, I kind of have that in my notes, but I didn't know if I was going to get to it.
And that's something different. Like we didn't have text message back in the day.
No,
Well,
They
you
got
know,
text message.
today they have sexting.
right.
Yeah,
Send me a picture.
Right, they got sexting.
It's a lot.
I'm like, it's not just text. I mean, I don't know. Y'all young folks, jump in here, help us out.
I mean, I've always found, because like I haven't been in any kind of like relationship or with anybody in probably about like 5 years now. And one thing that I've found actually that usually kind of sorts out and helps me to know who's got good intentions and who doesn't is I just try to be honest and intentional with my conversation from the start. Where, if there's somebody that I'm interested in, I usually just try and let them know right away, hey, I enjoy being your friend, and I would like for us to continue down this road to get to know one another better. And here's what my intentions are, and here's what this looks like for me. And like I said, I mean, there's some people, it's like they just run for the hills, and you're like, okay, well then that tells me that you're not on the same page as me. Like, and that's what I've found that kind of helps delineate your intentions, is just to be honest and straightforward. Like, I think our culture kind of has this weird habit of like trying to mask our intentions behind our words and the things that we say and do, where it's like, okay, well, if I'm just sneaky enough, eventually, I can get what I want, and I don't have to say it until we're to the point where all of a sudden we're sending each other pictures of our bodies, right? Where you're like, I'm not with that. Like, if anything, I would much rather just be honest with somebody and say, hey, I like you and I'd like to get to know you better. Is that something you're interested in? Here's who I am. And, just leave it at that, because I don't know. I think I try to stay away from certain things too. I think certain things breed temptation, like Snapchat. Snapchat is one that like predominantly people use for hookup culture, right? Where it's like, it's basically you're sending pictures back and forth with some text on there. And so it's like, that's a pretty easy road of temptation to walk down, because it's like, first it starts off with, I'm just taking pictures of my face and send you a text. And then it's my face and my chest. And then it's my face and half my body. And then it's my whole body. And then it's not my face, right? So I think that like knowing where you're tempted in that area for conversation is also helpful in this day and age.
Tierra.
I was gonna say, I think kind of like what Miss April was saying, along with the conversation we had about the curfew, I think those are really important keys for me, because especially when it comes to like online dating and things like that, you can tell, like, if a guy texts you after 9 o'clock at night, what you doing? Like, this conversation is not gonna be about what I want it to be about, right? So like those kinds of boundaries, like timing and things like that, but then also like learning how to steer the conversations away. Like, before it even gets to sexting or texting or whatever, there's a progression, right?
Yeah.
And so like learning how to change the subject. When people are like, oh, hey, can you send me a pic to save to your phone, to save to my phone? I feel like that's different than like, can you send me a pic of what you're wearing today? Like,
Right.
those are very different things. And
At
so
all.
learning how to like navigate that, and like being comfortable with establishing your boundaries early on. Like, I had to actually be upfront and be like, what did I say? Oh, in the beginning I was like, oh, this is my first time using Tinder, this is my blah blah blah, I'm not really comfortable sending my picture, would you, or sending my number or whatever, um can you send yours first? And normally for me, what would happen is if the guy was just like interested in seeing me, he would bounce like and ghost me after that. But like if the guy was actually interested in a conversation, then he'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, blah blah blah, and we talk about something else or whatever, right? And so I think that like it just comes down to how do you police your own boundaries, right? And like being comfortable in that. And I think like Miss Nikki was saying, there's so much temptation, and we're almost taught, and I can't speak for men, but I know especially for women, that we are taught like to bend on our boundaries, right? We're taught that like even if it makes you uncomfortable to go ahead and do this because you never know, you might miss out, right? Or you might lose this chance, or he's gonna move on, or blah blah blah. And I think that personally for me, it's just been really important to maintain those boundaries. And then it's an easy way, it's an easy litmus test to see who's actually down for a conversation and to get to know each other, and who's just there for a quickie, right?
Yeah, I think of he's not on here, but AJ. A lot of times when he tells me with their conversation, it's about what's going on right there. It's not a lot of la la, dream, things like that. And so that's something that they keep it pertinent conversation to what's taking place right there. Like if they're dealing with an issue, what are they about to go do tomorrow? Okay, what are we gonna do? And so it doesn't lead to those, what are you wearing? What do you have on? And so I know he tells me that, but I also agree with, like you were saying, Tony, I think curfew is a big one. You talk about back in the day. So when the phone call, because you just left each other at 9:30 and you get home at 10, well, what are you doing now? I just got in the house from you, so well, what are you wearing? I think curfew has to apply to more than just the physical spending time to each other. It has to also apply to the conversation, I'll say the reverse side of that. I think about my sister who's a grouch in the morning, right? Any guy she dated that called her at a certain time in the morning was not getting a personable conversation from her. And so that could deter people, so it's not just about those intimate things, it's conversation period. Like, what is the image you want to portray through conversating with someone? And so, yeah, I just was saying that.
Well,
we're gonna close up, but we're gonna close out, but I want to hear, I know Nikki did her homework, I know Tiara did her homework, I know April did her homework. I want to hear the person from the Bible that you would choose and things.
yeah, y'all can do that real quick. Yeah. Nick?
I was gonna say, is it okay that we have I feel like I have an Old Testament and a New Testament person.
Okay.
So I feel like New Testament, I would pick Peter.
Oh,
Okay. I feel like Peter is a natural born leader. He got some fire he got some fire in him, passionate, but also has some no nonsense to him and is on fire for God. I like that. So Peter for New Testament. But then I feel like Old Testament, I tried to think about it for a while, but I eventually just went with my gut instinct, and I have to say Solomon. Because I feel like Solomon had game, and he probably would have got me because he's intelligent, spoke multiple languages, also knew the word of God, right? Like I feel like he would have got me. So
Go for Solomon, just know you're gonna be sharing with quite a few other women.
Right.
To be fair.
What is sitting right here? She said that she picked him too.
Like, that's my man.
See, you could have been both of y'all, man. I don't know. Going off the OT.
Right.
He would have been one of 400.
Right. Y'all have been part of the harem.
Quality time, pretty low on the list.
Who's next?
April says Solomon. Let's hear Solomon. Why?
Solomon.
Because pretty much it's a lot of the
He
same
got
stuff
game?
that Tiara said. 'Cause in reading, in the way he talked about and talked to, and I was like, Hi.
Well, Sheba walked away impressed.
Right.
The Queen of Sheba walked away impressed.
I'm like, all right now, all right. Like, you need to teach a class.
Hey, he got it. That smooth talking right there.
Like, okay then, baby. So yeah.
That's a move, huh? Hit him with the Song of Solomon lines.
Right.
Take some notes.
I mean, even in Proverbs, it's like, be satisfied with the wife of your youth, a graceful deer and
It's like,
a loving doe. It's like,
Wouldn't have
man,
got me.
Solomon-
He
that's
would
how you
not
talking
have-
about us?
Solomon,
You
boy.
know he would not have got me, boy.
Nick, who you got?
Oh, David, all day long.
Oh, she got the warrior.
Yeah, to this day, remember that I like that bad boy.
To this day.
I like David, but I love David, and David loved God, because even when he was cutting up, he would come being like, "Oh my God, Lord," he knew when to get it together and fall at his feet. Like, I don't know. I thought David would have been my husband though.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You would have had to share too.
Oh, I know. I
So
thought
you're
about
okay
that.
with that. You'd be like, I'll have my room and you have your room.
Yeah,
You'd be okay with
in this day and time, I'm okay with that. You live across the street.
I mean,
Now, Tony, you didn't get to do the homework, but you've been sitting here thinking, what's your lady from the Bible?
Oof. Man, that's a rough one. I mean, if I had to choose someone, I think I would go with Sarah. Just because, I mean, she stuck with Abraham through a lot. Like, I mean, a lot, where you're like, any other woman would have left him. And I think her faith is just a testament to what kind of woman she is, that she's willing to hold on to faith for so long, and that she never gave that up. That she heard God say something to her and she stuck to her guns and knew it doesn't matter if I'm 90, 105, 110 years old. If God said it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I think that that's kind of a principle that you'd like to have in a wife, right? Is a woman who's going to be faithful, because if she's that faithful to God, she's going to be that faithful to you.
Right.
So.
oh, yeah.
And also, I'd like to say for the record, y'all all chose wrong as far as the men go, because Stephen's the one. That man was so committed, he died for it. Come on.
But that's the problem.
Yeah.
He died early. I don't want the
problem.
man to die early.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. I mean, I'm just saying, assuming that he didn't die early, right?
I
He was a
talking to
loyal
one of
dude.
one of my friends about it, and they were like, why do girls always choose the bad guys? And that's why girls choose the bad guys, because the bad guys would choose the girl over their purpose or the world or whatever. The good guys will always choose the higher purpose, right? And Stephen was too
Dang.
good. He chose the higher purpose. He
See,
chose the Lord.
I would have picked
That's messed
Joshua.
up.
Who?
Joshua.
Why?
Because he was
Oh
fighting.
yeah, I forgot about him.
That's what I thought. I thought Tierra was going to say Joshua.
He was a
but-
fighter, right? He knew the word. He had a personal relationship, which is the most attractive thing for me. A personal relationship with the Lord, right? And he led the nation. Oh, yeah. And he wasn't afraid to take charge. Yeah.
And no wonder why it's so hard to find a date with all these women. Y'all are looking at all these dudes. You're like, dang, I'm just freaking average Joe over here.
I can't believe I
Rip.
forgot about
David
Joshua.
Joshua. Ain't nobody
I
choose
can't
Moses.
believe I
No,
forgot.
Moses was wimpy to me. Like Moses was wimpy.
Well, I would take
Go ahead.
Abigail.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I knew that's who you were gonna say, Daddy.
Abigail.
Right.
She prophesied the man's, kingship and spoke up, and I mean,
Took charge.
took charge. She wasn't afraid. Like, come on, girl.
Yeah.
I would also say Esther would be a great pick.
Esther, okay. I feel like Esther's obvious, but I don't think I really like her.
Esther's like Solomon.
Yeah,
The
that's
obvious
the problem
choice.
though.
Yeah, I think
She
That's
out
why I
of,
didn't say Esther.
Yeah. she out of my league.
She out of your league,
She
baby.
the dream girl.
Yeah.
Abigail is real, down to earth.
Hey man, you can dream, all right? I gotta be able to dream, all right? Come on.
So yes.
Well, we definitely enjoyed y'all. Y'all made this one fun.
Yeah.
This one was fun.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to stop it, huh?
Yeah, you can stop recording.
Still shaking my head that I forgot about Joshua.
Don't be hating. That's because you look at something
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
I'm trying to find where it's
Yeah,
at.
but
Oh,
you're going
right
back.
there, right
Right, go back to it.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Right there.
there you go.
There we go.